Every year on Yom Kippur, we recite the Eleh, Ezkerah, the Martyrology service, sections about different leaders in Jewish history who died simply because of who they were. Someone who died so that others could live, someone who risked their own life simply because of who they are. For the past year and a half, Russia has been attacking Ukraine, threatened by democracy at its borders, and we have watched in disbelief as bustling and affluent major metropolitan cities have become shells of themselves, destroyed by airstrikes and bombing bombardments. In the immediacy of Russia's tyrannical invasion, we banded together for support. We reached out to our brothers and sisters at the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Holy Ascension in Maplewood and my colleague, Father Hot, to assemble care packages with essential items to be sent overseas. Members of our community even showed up there for Mass as a sign of support. After the first month of Russia's invasion, Maplewood held a moment of solidarity at Town Hall, even raising the Ukrainian blue and yellow flag. And yet, the war rages on. More and more refugees have fled Ukraine, some to America or Israel, others crossing the border to seek refuge in Eastern European countries like Poland and Romania. Well, the death toll from this conflict continues to climb. And we, as a society, I fear, are becoming more apathetic. While Ukraine has not listed the numbers of casualties, the United States suggests that over 70,000 Ukrainian soldiers, volunteer soldiers, died fighting to defend their home. The United Nations has recorded over 15,000 civilian deaths to date. 26-year-old Margot works in a mortuary not far from the front lines of Donetsk, trying to identify the bodies piled high in the small brick building. She speaks to them. It may sound weird, she said, but I'm the one who wants to apologize for their deaths. They didn't die their own death. They were killed for their own lands. Margot sits in a mortuary trying to identify the unnamed and unknown martyrs who were killed simply because of who they are and where they live. And so we remember today some of those whose names are known, those who were able to be identified, and mourn the thousands of lives lost. Eleh, Ezkerah, these I recall, and my soul melts with sorrow for the bitter course of history. Tears pour from my eyes.
Eleh, Ezkerah, v'nafshi alai yeshbecha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot dima.
Anna Priemko's brother lived in Sumy, Ukraine with his 3 young boys. Anna's mother recently moved in with them. The world collapsed, she said, when she heard a bomb hit their house last March, killing them all. Only Anna, 37, survived. Her brother owned a textile business and donated countless blankets and pillows to those in need after the war began. Her mother was a kindergarten teacher, continuing to educate children during the war and create a safe space for them. 2 of her nephews, 10 and 15 years old, loved Sambo, a form of martial arts that originated in the former USSR. Her 3rd nephew, 5 years old, dreamed of being a soccer star. Eleh, Ezkerah, for these I recall.
Eleh, Ezkerah, v'nafshi alai yeshbecha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot dima.
Daria Belenitsina and Alexander Sokhenko have been living together in an apartment in Kyiv for nearly 2 years. Like any cute couple, they had cute couple nicknames. Daria went by Dasha, Alexander by Sasha. They first met in Sasha's hometown of Motazhin. When they got word that war had begun, they calmly packed up their things, grabbed their rescue dog Floy, and prepared to leave Kyiv to join Sasha's family in Motazhin, 28 miles west of Kyiv. His parents still lived there. His mother was even the mayor of the small village. She reassured them that it would be surely calmer than in the major metropolitan city of Kyiv. Soon, though, fighting began on the outskirts of the village, and Russian soldiers started ransacking shops and looting homes. Rockets rained down on buildings. A few weeks after that small village was occupied by Russian troops, there was a brief window of calm. They packed up their bags and decided to head back to Kyiv, but at the last minute, Sasha refused to go and leave his parents behind. He encouraged Dasha to go ahead without him, promising that they would be reunited. At night, they exchanged voice messages over Instagram, telling each other how much they loved one another. Sasha left a voicemail saying he just wanted to come back and walk their dog again. But after 2 weeks, Dasha stopped hearing from Sasha. After 4 weeks of silence, she heard from a friend. "Condolences. We can't believe it ourselves," said the friend's message. Sasha and his parents had been killed by Russian troops and found in a half-buried, shallow mass grave. On their anniversary, Dasha posted on Instagram the following: "We should have been together. We had plans. We wanted to live together. But Russia decided otherwise. We were not given the right to choose. Eleh Ezkerah. For these I recall."
Eleh Ezkerah, v'nafshi ala yesh b'cha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot dima.
Ludmila Shrilitz was 53 years old and was sick for as long as she could remember. She struggled with polio, a heart condition, high blood pressure, and diabetes. But she was a fighter and continued to live her life to the fullest. She found joy every day in her family and working on her family's farm. She was working in the yard on that farm along with her husband when Russian troops invaded the town of Kaspero, Mykolivka. Bombs landed in the village, one right after the other. Soldiers began shooting at homes with machine guns. Victoria, Ludmila's daughter, saw a direct hit to the house and the building shattered. When Victoria found her mother, her body was mutilated. Her skin was burnt. Her hair was gone. Her limbs were broken. And she was lifeless, covered in blood. Her father refused to leave his wife behind and carried the body of his beloved down the street as Russian shooting continued. They begged the soldiers, "Please, let us just say goodbye to our mother and let us bury her." The soldiers laughed and continued shooting. Eleh Ezkerah. For these I recall.
Eleh Ezkerah, v'nafshi ala yesh b'cha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot dima.
Daria Hortova and Artem Hortoivi studied together in university, and were activists. They fell in love thanks to their activism. They married in August of 2020, and in February of the following year, they had twin baby girls. As they celebrated their daughters' first birthdays, Artem received a call that he was needed for military duty. His wife hugged him and begged him to stay. "You don't understand," he said. "If I stay, our future is no longer Ukraine, our future is only Russia. How will I look the girls in the eyes if I stay?" They spoke whenever possible, although cell service was spotty. They weren't even able to speak on his 26th birthday. But on May 9th, a day later, he called her and promised that he would be in touch again the next day. But on the next day, May 10th, instead she heard from a member of the border service explaining that Artem had been killed. Artem dreamt that his daughters will live in Ukraine, speak Ukrainian, and love their country. Daria has promised to fulfill his wish, and even as war wages on, refuses to leave their home, because Ukraine is their home. Eleh Ezkerah, for these I recall.
Eleh Ezkerah, Menachem alai yesh becha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot ima.
On February 27th of last year, a 6-year-old girl was caught in shelling in the port city of Mariupol. Her wounded father, bloodied and bandaged, lifted her, still wearing her unicorn pajamas, into the back of an ambulance as medical professionals tried to save her and failed. As she breathed her last breath, the medic angrily said to journalists surrounding the ambulance, "Show this to Putin. The eyes of this child, the eyes of crying doctors." Eleh Ezkerah, for these I recall.
Eleh Ezkerah, v'nafshi alai yesh becha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot ima.
Navin Shekarapa Gion Gudar was a 21-year-old medical student. On March 1st, he was killed while buying groceries in Kharkiv. He told his family that he had been sheltering in a bunker for days, but had run out of food. He continued with his studies daily while sheltering in place. The 21-year-old moved from India to Ukraine to study to become a doctor. The tragic irony that someone was killed while being so committed to dedicating their lives to saving others. Eleh Ezkerah, for these I recall.
Eleh Ezkerah, v'nafshi alai yesh becha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot ima.
Victor and Nadia Kozarevich were married for 43 years and lived in a modest apartment in Bucha, Ukraine, a suburb 20 miles from Kyiv, full of apartment buildings and big box stores. Victor was a set designer for television studios, but was home in the afternoon to spend time with his wife. According to neighbors, a tank powered down the streets of the small suburb and stopped 120 yards from their apartment building. Wanting to play target practice with an urge to shoot something, a Russian soldier opened fire, and the blast from the tank struck their apartment. Nadia died from the blast wave. Victor was crushed by pieces of brick wall that fell on him. After 27 days of Russian troops attacking this small suburb, there was no room left in the morgue. So their lifeless bodies just remained in their apartment. After 4 days, their son was finally able to find them and identify their bodies. Eleh Ezkerah, for these I recall.
Eleh Ezkerah, Menachem ala yesh becha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot ima.
On December 29th, 2022, in that small brick mortuary, Margot was opening up body bags labeled identified, and she froze. She initially expressed sadness with each and every lost soul brought into the mortuary, but had become numb after looking into pair after pair of lifeless eyes. But as she slowly unzipped the plastic carrier, she immediately recognized the face of Andrei, her husband, who had been killed earlier that day. He volunteered for military service and died almost immediately. Through tears of disbelief, Margot acknowledged he died while defending his motherland. Eleh Ezkerah, for these I recall.
Eleh Ezkerah, Menachem ala yesh becha, al koroteinu hamarot, einai zolgot ima.
Continue with the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divarach kirutei ve'amlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Olmei Olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal. Shmei Dekudsha Barichu. La'ela la'ela mikol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Damiran be'alma ve'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru
Amen.
Amen.